Good morning, and thank you for coming to this press conference. My name is Robert Field. I'm the board chair of the Federation of Metro Tenants Associations. Just wanted to talk to you today about a number of matters, one of them about the above guideline increases that affect tenants around Ontario. We're here today because tens of thousands of tenants across Ontario are owed millions of dollars in rent from landlords. Starting in 2006, tenants who received an above-guideline increase, we call it an AGI, from their landlord, were owed a rent reduction when it expired. These orders have started expiring, and landlords have not been passing on the rent reductions to their tenants. The rent reductions can be as high as 9%, and tenants have to remain in the building the whole time during that period to claim their reduction. Tenants are owed money all across the province, even in the minister's own writing. The province mandates that the City of Toronto and all municipalities are to send automatic rent reductions whenever taxes to tenants are reduced, and that's required by law. However, in this instance, the province has refused to do the same, and rent reductions as high as 9% are being lost to tenants. We keep hearing stories that landlords are refusing to reduce the rent as they have been ordered to by the Landlord and Tenant Board. This is a major risk for landlords. Landlords who violate legal orders and refuse to follow the law are committing an offense under the Residential Tenancies Act and could be prosecuted by the Residential Housing Enforcement Unit in provincial court. It's December, and the holidays are right around the corner. And we're hoping that all affected tenants get rent reductions in their stocking this year instead of just a lump of coal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you for your remarks, and to everyone who's here today, especially tenants who have been affected by above guideline rent increases that have expired. I'm here today to talk about the mess that we're in because of years of inaction by the previous Liberal government and the refusal of the current government to address this situation. Because of the tremendous work that the folks at the FMTA have done, my office found an order for an above-the-guideline rent increase that expired in a building in my riding. This building, 280 Dundas Street East, at the corner of Dundas and Sherbourne, is an older high-rise building. The increase was ordered by the Landlord-Tenant Board in 2009 and set to expire 10 years later. When this order came to the attention of my office, I decided to do things the right way and took myself directly to the building. My staff and I knocked on every single door in that building 3 times to find tenants who were owed rent reductions. After finding out that no tenant got the reduction, I mailed a letter to the landlord. My office had to follow up with tenants many times, and we found out that the reductions had finally been given. Like many tenants in my riding, this building is home to many working class folks and many seniors on fixed income. The rent reduction represents a real monetary amount in their pockets that can be used for things like groceries and prescriptions. I want to point out just how ridiculous this process is. It shouldn't have to take a local MPP to knock on every single door in a building to secure a legally mandated rent reduction. This process has zero accountability, and there is currently no way to track whether tenants who are owed reductions have received them, other than literally going through buildings and knocking on every single door. The Liberals have failed to create a streamlined process for ensuring that tenants aren't paying unnecessary rent, and the Ford government has done nothing to address this. In Toronto Centre, which is the most dense riding in the province, tenants get in touch with my office about trying to understand and fight above the guideline rent increases very, very frequently. As the AGIs expire, it's mind-boggling that as a tenant, there is no easy and user-friendly mechanism to verify when orders expire and who they affect. Today, I'm proud to join forces with the FMTA and with Neighbourhood Legal Services to shed light on this pressing issue. Tenants in our province deserve to have a better way to address expired above the guideline rent increases. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brendan Jowett. I'm a staff lawyer at Neighbourhood Legal Services. It's a community legal clinic located in downtown Toronto. For many tenants, when they receive an above guideline increase, it sends a shockwave through their community, and it starts forcing people to ask themselves the questions of where do we get this extra money? These people who are generally unable to save anything are literally taking food off the table. They're taking clothing off their own backs. and they are unable to meet their own basic needs just to pay the cost of this rent increase. If we think about how much an above guideline increase can actually amount to, when you add it on top of the regular guideline increase, it could be as much as a 15% rent increase over a period of 3 years, or almost 15%. No one's social assistance rates are going up by 15%. Nobody's wages are going up that quickly. Pensions, old age security, these much needed support payments are not increasing, but people's rents are skyrocketing as a result of above guideline rent increases. The legal process that tenants are forced into is fundamentally disempowering. They have no control over what expenditures landlords take on. The landlords who are generally served by legal counsel have a significant information benefit, and for tenants, it's a very difficult process to go through. They're also not able to raise their own issues that they want to talk about, and very few tenants are aware that above guideline increases actually expire and that the landlord is required to reduce their rent. That information is contained, buried in the back of an order in a schedule. Should the tenant be able to read that far to even learn that they might be entitled to a rent reduction 10 years from the time that the order is issued. So this benefit is largely elusive to tenants, and there are a number of serious barriers that tenants face in being able to access a rent reduction. As Member Morrison has said, there is no clear legal process that is provided for tenants to actually recognize or realize their rent reductions. Tenants have to be aware of their rights, and they have to be aware that they are entitled to a rent reduction, which might mean having to keep an order from the Landlord and Tenant Board that is 10 years old, having to refer to it to understand what their rights are. The order for landlords to reduce the rent has basically no enforcement mechanism. The Rental Housing Enforcement Unit basically does nothing to actually enforce the law, and almost never do we see prosecutions take place for offenses under the Residential Tenancies Act, like charging an unlawful rent. It is, and there's also no tenant application that's specific to this issue. So it's untenable to expect individual tenants to bring their own applications to the Landlord and Tenant Board. There are also structural barriers that make it difficult for tenants to be able to enforce their rights. To go to the Landlord and Tenant Board, they have to take a day off work. They have to file an application. If they are able to do that correctly, there's a fee that comes with filing that application. They have to wait several months before their application is ever heard. Tenant applications are generally deprioritized at the Landlord and Tenant Board, so they're lucky to be heard on the first hearing date, which means multiple days being taken off work. The process is confusing and alienating for tenants. While landlords are able to afford paralegals and legal representation, tenants are generally going unrepresented, and with cuts to legal aid, we are less and less able to actually represent those who qualify for our services even. And even the calculation process of understanding what reduction the tenants are entitled to is extremely complicated. This, of course, is more difficult for people with mental health conditions, for people who speak English as an additional language, and for senior citizens. And then there's a question of whether tenants should reduce their rent on their own. Well, that's also a risky calculus for tenants to unilaterally reduce their rent when they're not sure how much they're owed, they're not sure what they're entitled to, and the landlord has the power to threaten them with eviction, to bring them to the Landlord and Tenant Board. They risk facing Landlord and Tenant Board filing fees, and they also have to do this calculation, which in its very nature is technical. So it's not a viable solution to leave tenants to sort this out themselves or to fight for this alone. The government has to step up. It has to stand up for tenants in Ontario.
We're good? No questions? Cool.
Thank you.